Ladies and gents, glad to bring you Femos and Paul, the twin testicles of Highmaul. Yes, indeed, the two big fat Ogron with a buttload of health. And they're there to kick your ass and take your names. One of the first encounters actually included a shit ton of mechanics that need to be managed, not just on timers and all that kind of stuff. You actually have to work in order to generate how these mechanics are going to be working along. We've got things like interrupting shouts, shield charges. I don't think I need to explain many of these things to you. You'll know what they are. We also have Quake, which is going to cause a fire around there and cause one of the bosses to stamp his feet. We've got Pulverize, which is going to shatter the ceiling and drop it all over us. We got all this kind of shit going on. And of course, a classic favourite, Whirlwind. Whirlwind, yes. This does lead to several things, such as a melee clusterfuck I'd like to talk about later. So, rather than give a guide, because this is beta, probably change, you can see exactly how this fight works in front of you. A few things of note. One, fire on this kind of stuff is weird. It revealed a very big problem with the style of healing that's going on in WoD Draenor, which is the not casting on the move kind of thing. Very, very quickly, healers and DPSs decided, if this isn't going to kill me and we are capable of healing through this, we're not moving. And I can see that being a recurring theme through WoD Draenor until we meet something that, like, we have to move from this, okay? There's no way we can possibly heal through this, then we'll have to move, and it's a real fucking bummer. Right now, with the way the game works, with DPSs not being able to do much on the move, and healers not being able to do much on the move, and still the bosses are putting out tons and tons of damage. I fucking called this, right? I called this from the healer change. I said, this is going to be a problem. And it occurred last night when we had one of these mechanics. The fire is everywhere, and it's nasty. As a rogue, I was able to counter it quite well with Cloak of Shadows, similar to the DKs. I could be very aggressive with the fire, as mainly it's based around a debuff. But when it came to everybody else who couldn't reset it or avoid it in certain manners, it came to the point where it's like, you know, it costs us so much to move around. It costs us so much resources. It costs us a ton of DPS. It costs us a ton of healing. Tanks have to be healed. That we're going to heal through this. Just stay in it, take as little damage as you can, but realistically, stay clumped together because it's far easier to heal while we're all in a big group. Take the debuffs on the chin like a fucking boss and actually stand there and heal through it. And I can just, please change this. Please change this because it's going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing. Unless it's apps, and the only way you're going to counter it, Blizz, the only way you're going to counter this is instead of having cool effects like this fire moving everywhere, I actually thought it was fine. It was something to keep me on my toes as a melee. I could jump over it and avoid debuffs sometimes. All that kind of stuff was very cool. But realistically, the only way this can be countered is by making it so devastating that people have to move, and that's not fun. That's not fun. Creating these intermittent mazes of unpredictability. This fire is very unpredictable in where it's coming unless you're spinning your camera 360 degrees all the time. Then, yeah, it's just a pain in the ass. Please just don't do it. Okay? Just think about reverting some of these changes. So moving isn't a giant pain in the ass and we can actually have a bit of fun doing it. Right? It's a bit of fun being able to dodge and cast on the move and it not be a thing in your mind. But when people are saying things like, this fire doesn't do a lot unless you're taking ridiculous amounts of debuffs, then, you know, just kind of avoid as many as possible, but stay relatively close because it's easy enough to heal. I just think it's a very big fucking bummer. The other thing I'd like to bring up here in terms of feedback is, let's not have that this boss is the guy that melee can't attack and this boss is the guy that melee can attack. Especially as these bosses have a synergy, okay? The way these things work is with energy regen. So, energy regen, they're going to use one of their 3 abilities. Each of them have their 3 different abilities I listed earlier. And at 33%, 66%, and 100% respectively, they'll use one of those abilities in a very predictable order, okay? They use the same 3 in the same order at the same energy each time. However, you can see this debuff that they have, or buff I should say, and it's either green, amber, or red. So depending on how far away they are, it will turn red. That increases their haste, increases the speed they cast their spells. So when we've got things like interrupting shout, which does what it says on the tin, if they're far apart, that's going to cast almost instantly. However, if they're close, then it doesn't cast as fast. Okay, that's the simple basis of how this is going on. What I would like to see is not this case where melee have to stick to one boss, which is Femos at this point is actually so melee unfriendly. He has the Whirlwind. He also has the Quake, which causes the fire, but also stamps his feet at the same time. He has all these things going on, which makes it very, very difficult. I think he has the Whirlwind as well. it makes it such a fucking pain in the ass to DPS him that, of course, melee gravitate to one boss. Now, the way this boss seems to work is that they need to die pretty much at the same time. That seems to be the intention. We thought they would have linked health like we usually see with twins, but no. In this case, they do need to die around about the same time as they enrage when one of the others die and become very, very difficult to kill. One of them is slightly bugged. You'll see people killing it by killing one of the other ones and the others enraged, not doing enough. But if you do it the other way around, you get absolutely smashed in the face. I'm assuming that's going to be fixed. But melee have no problem switching target. In fact, it's kind of fun. This is kind of an inverse AQ40 Twin Emperors. And there was a very cool moment as I did that fight where the melee were streaming across the battlefield to go towards the other boss. And actually allow tanks even to make a moment where the bosses come together, because we know when the abilities will happen, and as the bosses come together, the melee change target and go away with the other tank, and then we have this sort of accordion style momentum going with the melee. That would be quite cool. When you have a boss that is absolutely distinctly melee unfriendly, you create a DPS imbalance. Obviously the guy who was melee friendly died much quicker because the melee had no interest in switching to the other boss because he's a total nightmare. So we just glued to one boss and that one obviously dies much quicker. And that's no good, especially for bosses that really realistically need to be dying together. I would much rather see it the exact opposite, especially as we move into Mythic, because we don't know how that difficult that's going to be. What we might end up seeing is that melee again are dropped out because you've created this scenario where melee can't effectively switch around. I would love to see that not be the case. I really love to see that be the case. And further boss feedback I would give, make it much more important to manage the energy of these two. What happens is each of these abilities is very easily counterable. You can move in for things like Enfeebling Roar, which needs to be spread amongst the raid, so you collapse the raid and then you spread out again. And on their own, they're not too difficult. I would rather see this boss more like Omnitron Defense System, where if you weren't careful, two very dangerous abilities were going to line up. Now, they gain energy at different rates depending on their spread out and moving back in and all that kind of stuff. So these abilities do line up. I would like to see that energy regen occur a little bit faster, and therefore there is more opportunity for both mechanics to line up nicely, and therefore create some dangerous moments. When these abilities go off individually, they're really easy and trivial to deal with. Let's make it so that we have to care about managing this aspect of the fight. The way it was right now, and the way it's dealt with at the moment, is that tanks can drag these bosses, spread them out, move them back in, pretty much at will, and it's not going to create too much of a problem because the energy generates at such a rate that it's very rare. I think just towards the end of killing one of the bosses did they actually line up. There should be dangerous moments where it's like, okay, we have to spread these out, but we need to move back because this is going to cause a problem. That's my feedback on the twin Ogrons. Hope you enjoyed that, guys, and I'll see you again next time.